In previous lessons, we've talked about what constitutes solid musical training, as well as many aspects of the craft of musical composition. Here I want to go further and look at what, in my opinion, makes a great composer. Ultimately, the goal of craftsmanship is to feel at ease with the musical materials. This is rather like learning a language. You want to eventually become fluent. In music, this means quickly seeing multiple solutions to common problems. But as with a language, it requires a lot of practical experience. Doing 10 counterpoint or harmony exercises is not enough. This is because these things are not just intellectual. As with learning a language, they require lots of in-depth experience. Overall, a composer's quality might be measured by what I call their checklist, all the things they demand of themselves. A talented but untrained young composer may feel that something is not right in a given passage, but they often have no idea where to look for the solution. The kind of mental checklist I'm talking about here is a tool for knowing specifically what to change in a given musical situation to make the music better. In this lesson, I'll elaborate on the main items in my own mental checklist. A composer who is a reasonable professional but doesn't aim for more does not demand as much of themselves as the best artists do. To develop this latter part of the checklist requires looking at the best music we know and trying to understand the choices the composer made. Why is their final solution better? The latter may even require recomposing the passage in question in your mind to see what the less convincing solutions would have been. So what do I look for when examining a piece of music? Let's start with the simpler questions on the checklist. Harmony. Is the oral harmonic language coherent, allowing the listener to develop expectations the composer can play with? Are there sudden bumps that stick out for no good reason? Is the composer using all the available resources to make the music expressive? For example, does the bass line make sense and provide a sense of direction? Is the harmonic tension well controlled and varied? Does the harmony breathe? Is the punctuation effective and appropriate to where we are in the piece? Counterpoint. Is the texture rich enough? Does the main line move around, or is it always in the same place? Are the accompanying parts as rich as possible or just formulaic? Is there enough variation of texture through the piece? Obviously, a song will have less variety than a symphony, but even within a song, the secondary parts shouldn't be 100% predictable. Orchestration. Are the instruments used idiomatically? Is the degree of difficulty appropriate for the given ensemble? Would difficult passages be better given to other instruments? Are the instruments and the registers chosen appropriate for the desired character? Are the instrumental combinations well balanced? Does the orchestration make the differences between foreground and background lines clear? Does it make them harder to discern? Has the composer orchestrated the dynamics so that, for example, they aren't removing instruments during a crescendo, or vice versa? Are accented moments orchestrated, or are they just marked with accents? Does the composer have everyone playing all the time? Or do they distribute the material in a way that sets contrasts of timbre into relief? For example, having various instruments and families pause sometimes so that when they return, their arrival is a special event. Music with text. Is the prosody correct without accents on insignificant words or syllables? Does the line make sense from a vocal point of view? Appropriate vocal registers and good vowels for long-held notes? Does the form of the piece underline and respect the form of the text? Are important moments in the text set off musically? Is important punctuation in the text respected? Is the voice well balanced with the accompaniment? Form. This is the hardest thing to discuss because it often refers to long-range relationships. Are the various degrees of punctuation appropriate? Is the local continuity convincing? Are there various degrees of contrast in a longer piece? Are the transitions convincing? Too many sudden transitions make the overall structure incoherent. Most transitions should be more gradual. In general, new material should not feel like it arrives randomly. It needs to be prepared in some way, and the listener should feel like it happens at the right time, not just randomly. Does the form breathe? Does the overall intensity increase? This doesn't mean that the piece should be one big crescendo, but rather that, If, for example, over a 10-minute piece there's no sense of emotional intensification, the listener will probably find it less convincing overall. Does the beginning attract interest and make the listener want to keep going? Is the ending convincing, or does the music just seem to stop arbitrarily? Does the overall form have a feeling of balance? Is there any kind of recapitulation to tie the whole work together? Do the proportions make sense? This isn't an easy question to answer. There's no simple formula. It depends mainly on the musical ideas and how much development they deserve, as well as on their potential interactions over the whole piece. Is the musical character really strong and memorable, or just tepid? These last questions about the larger issues of musical form move past craftsmanship into real art. There's also the question of whether the composer has developed a recognizable personal style. Finally, another important criterion for me when evaluating composers' work is the emotional range. If all the composer's work is in more or less the same character, it's less interesting than if there's a lot of emotional variety. In the coming lessons, we'll look at each of these criteria and show examples of what doesn't work, common errors.